Her hands froze the moment her eyes met the portrait on the wall. The man in the picture, dressed in white, smiling with quiet pride, was someone she once shared bread with in a cold orphanage many years ago. The same boy who used to sleep beside her on torn blankets. But now he was the master of this grand house. And in a few minutes, her whole world and his would change forever. Before we begin, hit subscribe. It's appreciated. Maria had been working as a maid in the city for years. Her hands were rough from scrubbing floors, her back sore from long hours, yet her heart stayed soft. Every morning, she tied her old scarf, whispered a small prayer, and went to work in a house that didn't feel like hers but needed her care. She had no family, no close friends, only memories of the orphanage where she grew up, and the faces of children she never saw again. The new house she worked in was different, bigger, quieter. The air smelled of flowers she didn't know the names of. The owner, Mr. Adrian, was kind but distant, always polite, always busy. He rarely spoke, and when he did, his voice carried the weight of someone who had built a life far away from pain. Maria never looked too long at him. He reminded her of something she couldn't name. Sometimes, when she dusted the library shelves, she would see family photos, happy smiles, shiny frames, laughter frozen in time. She often wondered what it felt like to belong to a home like that. Yet, deep inside, she told herself to be thankful. At least she was safe, fed, and trusted. One rainy morning, the air felt heavy, as if something unseen was about to unfold. The thunder rolled softly in the distance while Maria polished the silver frame on the mantel. That was when she saw it, a new portrait hanging high on the wall. Her breath caught, her hands trembled. The face staring back at her felt like a ghost from another life. If you were in her place, what would you have done? Tell us in the comments. The rain outside didn't stop for hours, but Maria didn't notice. Her eyes were locked on that portrait. The kind smile, the small scar near his eyebrow, the same eyes that once looked at her across the orphanage dining table. She stepped closer, her heart pounding. Could it really be him? The boy who once gave her his share of bread when she was hungry. His name was Daniel back then. Not Mr. Adrian. Not the rich man people spoke of in whispers. Just Daniel, the quiet boy with messy hair and a heart too kind for the world they lived in. They had grown up together in a place where kindness was rare and survival was everything. When families came to adopt, Maria always hoped someone would take them both. But one day, Daniel disappeared. They said a rich couple had taken him abroad. She never saw him again, until now. Every corner of the house suddenly felt unfamiliar. The sound of footsteps, the soft ticking of the clock, even her own reflection in the mirror seemed strange. She didn't know what to do. Should she tell him who she was? Would he even remember? Or worse, would he pretend not to? That night she couldn't sleep. Her small room at the back of the house felt colder than usual. She stared at the ceiling, remembering the nights they spent whispering dreams under the orphanage roof. Him saying he'd find her someday, and her laughing, not believing it. The next morning, she saw him in the garden talking to guests. He looked so different, confident, respected, loved. She wanted to speak, but her voice wouldn't come. Her heart whispered his name, but her lips stayed still. Every day after that, she watched quietly. She noticed how he treated everyone with respect. The gardener, the driver, even her. He always smiled, said thank you, but his eyes carried something else. A sadness, a distance she recognized. The kind that comes from remembering where you came from, but not being able to go back. One afternoon, while cleaning the study, she found an old wooden box. Inside were photos, letters, and a small bracelet made of colored thread, the same kind the orphans used to make. Her hands shook as she lifted it. On the inside, written in faded ink, was one name, Maria. Her tears fell before she could stop them. He remembered. All these years, he had kept a piece of her with him. She placed the bracelet gently back in the box, her heart heavy with both joy and fear. Should she tell him now? Should she let him know that the little girl from his past was standing just outside his door, cleaning his floors? The thought stayed with her like a heartbeat. The truth was waiting, and so was the moment that could change both their lives forever. Have you ever carried pain in silence, hoping one day someone would truly see you? Tell us in the comments. That evening, the house glowed with warm light. Guests filled the hall, laughter floated in the air, and music hummed softly in the background. Maria stood quietly near the staircase, holding a tray of glasses, trying to blend into the shadows. Her eyes found him again, Mr. Adrian or Daniel, as she still whispered in her heart. He looked proud but peaceful, standing beside his elegant wife, welcoming everyone with grace. She felt small among the noise and sparkle, yet her heart was louder than ever. Every sound faded when she saw him smile, the same smile that once made her believe the world could be kind. And suddenly, something inside her refused to stay silent any longer. Later that night, when the guests were gone and the house had fallen quiet, Maria walked toward the library. Her steps were soft, her hands trembling. The portrait on the wall seemed to watch her as she entered. She stood there, looking at it one last time before she turned, and saw him standing in the doorway. He looked surprised to see her there so late. "Maria, is everything all right?" he asked gently. Her voice shook as she spoke, her eyes wet but steady. You lived in St. Joseph's Orphanage, didn't you?" His breath caught. He blinked as if trying to remember a dream. "How do you know that?" She took a deep breath. "Because I was there too." For a long moment, silence filled the room. His eyes widened, his expression softening into disbelief, then recognition. His lips parted, but no words came out. He stepped closer, slowly, studying her face. The lines of time, the tired eyes, but still the same warmth he remembered. "Maria?" he whispered, barely breathing the name. Tears ran down her cheeks as she nodded. "I thought you forgot me," she said softly. He didn't speak. He just reached out, his hand shaking, and held hers. In that touch, years of distance, pain, and longing melted away. The portrait behind them seemed to glow in the dim light, like a witness to the truth they had both carried in silence. He closed his eyes, and for a moment he wasn't a rich man, and she wasn't a maid. They were just two children who had found each other again in a world that had once forgotten them. What would you have done if this truth was suddenly staring back at you? Tell us in the comments. The next morning, sunlight filled the house like a gentle blessing. Everything looked the same, but nothing felt the same anymore. Maria worked quietly as always, but her heart was light, almost floating. Mr. Adrian, now Daniel again in her heart, walked beside her in silence. There was no need for many words. Some truth spoke best through the calm between them. Later that day, he called her to the garden, the same place where she once watched him from afar. He told her how he had searched for traces of the orphanage for years, but it had been shut down. He had kept that little bracelet to remember where he came from, and who had shown him kindness when the world was still cold. "You were the first person who ever shared with me," he said softly. "I never forgot that." Maria smiled, tears shining in her tired eyes. "And you were the first who made me believe someone could care," she whispered. It wasn't a grand reunion or a scene of big words, just quiet honesty between two souls who had walked through different roads but carried the same piece of the past. From that day, Daniel made sure her life changed, not because of pity, but because of love and respect. He gave her rest, comfort, and a place not just to work, but to belong. She became part of the family, not a shadow in the background. The walls that once separated them slowly faded, replaced by warmth and shared memories. Sometimes she would still stop by that portrait, not to cry, but to smile. It no longer reminded her of pain, but of how far both of them had come. Years later, when visitors came to the house, Daniel would point to the woman arranging flowers by the window and say, "She's not just our helper, she's family. She's the reason I learned what kindness means." The story of the rich man and the maid wasn't about luck or fate. It was about kindness that never dies, even when time tries to bury it. Because sometimes, the people we forget are the ones who once saved us, in ways we only understand much later. What part of this story stayed with you the most? Tell us in the comments, show some love with a like, and subscribe to stay inspired.